The Senate will come to order. The senators will please take their seats. Those persons not entitled to the privilege of the floor will kindly retire to the gallery. The senators and all in attendance will stand and be led in prayer by the Reverend Matthew D. Bates, Centenary United Methodist Church, Richmond. Reverend Bates, thank you, sir.
Let us pray. Almighty and all compassionate God, we have gathered here to do important work. We pause in these moments to humble ourselves before you and to acknowledge you as the creator and source of life and its many blessings. Whatever differences we may have today of background, social standing, personal history, or political philosophy, we acknowledge that we share a connection to the one who creates, guides, and seeks to bless us all. In the midst of the important discussions and deliberations of this body, let us never forget what we share in common. You have blessed this Commonwealth with a rich history, with gifted leaders past and present, with natural beauty and many resources. Let us use these gifts for the good of all, and make us wise and careful stewards of all these blessings. We pray for all the citizens of this Commonwealth. Bless each person with a sense of purpose and dignity. Be with our sisters and brothers who have plenty. Fill them with gratitude for their blessings and use them to bless others. Bless and keep those in this hour who are homeless or sick or hungry or in prison or without hope or consolation in the midst of a time of trial. Now we thank you for these servants who offer themselves to serve the common good of the citizens of Virginia. Bless them in their labors. Fill their hearts and minds with a burning desire to do justice and to love mercy on behalf of all the people of Virginia. Grant them clarity of thought, purity of intention, and transparency in their actions. Bless the deliberations of this hour. Allow the members of this body to be as eager to understand as they are to be understood. Let the members of this body find ways to model virtue in their work on behalf of those they serve, that we all might be inspired to speak, act, and live in ways that promote the health of this great Commonwealth now and in the days to come. Amen.
Amen. The clerk will call the roll. All those present, please vote aye. The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
You have a quorum, Mr. President. Senate Journal for Monday, January 25th, 2016.
The senator from Bath County, Senator Deeds, moves that the reading of the journal be waived. All in favor of waiving the reading of the journal will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 36, noes 3, Rule 36-1.
Ayes 36, noes 3, Rule 36-1. The reading of the journal is waived. The clerk will please report any communications from the House of Delegates. The senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would respectfully move that we waive the reading of any communications received from the House of Delegates.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the reading of the communication be waived? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 36, noes 4.
Ayes 36, noes 4. The reading of the communication is waived. The clerk will please report any communications from the governor.
I do not have any, sir.
The time has come to recognize visitors to the gallery and take up other matters for the morning hour. The senior senator from Henrico, Senator McEachin.
Mr. President, I rise for an introduction.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, we were prayed over today by the Reverend Matthew D. Bates of Centenary United Methodist Church here in the city of Richmond. Mr. President, I would ask that you give him the warm welcome of the Senate.
Thank you, Senator. Would Reverend Bates please rise? Thank you. You were quick making it up to the gallery. We appreciate that, and thank you so much for being here. I know you've been here several times to help us get off on a good start to the day, so thank you for being here today. And look forward to seeing you in the future. I would ask the members of the Senate to please join me in offering Reverend Bates the warm welcome of the Senate. The Senator from Fauquier, Senator Vogel.
Thank you, Mr. President. From our noisy corner here, I rise for purposes of an introduction.
Has the floor.
I would like to recognize in the gallery 2 visitors who are here today from home. They dug out from the snow. Rob Frogale, who is president of Annandale Millwork Company Corporation, and also top of the Virginia Builders Association. He's here visiting today in the Capitol and meeting with members on a bill of great importance to him, as many of you know. And he's also accompanied by Arthur Pierce, who is the president-elect of the top of Virginia Builders Association. So I'd like to ask you to please extend to them the very warm welcome of the Senate. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Would Mr. Rob Frogale and Mr. Arthur Pierce please rise? Thank you all for being here today, and I know, have spoken with the Senator from Fauquier. You all had your share of snow. Hopefully that will be all we see for you this year, but we still have a ways to go in winter. But thank you for making the time and effort to be here today to advocate for what's important to you. I'd ask the members of the Senate to please join me in offering Mr. Rob Frogale and Arthur Pierce the warm welcome of the Senate. The junior senator from Loudoun, Senator Wexton.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise for purposes of an introduction.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you. Today in the gallery, we have members of the Centennial Rally for Equal Rights Committee who represent the American Association of University Women, the League of Women Voters, and the Virginia chapter of the National Organization for Women and Women Matter. Joining us, and I believe there may be others, but I know we have Bonnie Reed, Candace Graham, and Pat Fishback with us today. I will put in a plug that they'll be returning to the Capitol to join us again for the Centennial Rally for Equal Rights, which will be held here at the Capitol on the Capitol steps on February 16th. That rally will honor the gathering of suffragists on those same steps in their quest to secure women's right to vote exactly 100 years ago from that date. These ladies are here to rededicate their initiative this year to secure equal rights for women in the Constitution with the ratification of the Equal Rights Amendment, and I expect we will hear a little bit more about that later in the session. So, Mr. President, if you would please join me in giving these determined and accomplished women the very warm welcome of the Virginia State Senate.
Thank you, Senator. Would members that are here advocating for the equal rights please rise? What a great crowd you had this morning. Thank you all for being here. It's always good seeing your familiar faces, and we really appreciate you being here at the Capitol and advocating for equal rights across the Commonwealth for all. So thanks for being here. I'd ask the members of the Senate to please join me in offering the members of the Equal Rights Advocacy Group the warm welcome of the Senate. The Senator from Mecklenburg, Senator Ruff.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise for an introduction.
Senator has the floor.
Joining us in the gallery today, we have Connor Francis, who is a high school senior from Campbell County. I ask you to give a warm welcome to Connor.
Thank you, Senator. Would Connor please rise? Good morning, Connor. Thank you for being here. Good afternoon, actually. Thank you for being here and coming to watch your senator from Mecklenburg in action, and all the rest of the Senate. It should be an exciting day if you're able to stay with us for a couple hours. So I'd ask the members of the Senate to please join me in offering Connor Francis the warm welcome of the Senate. Senator from Hanover, Senator McDougal.
Thank you, Mr. President. Rise for the purposes of an introduction.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, we have with us in the gallery behalf of Senator from Henrico, well, I guess one junior senator from Henrico and the senior senator from Henrico, and myself. We have one of the supervisors from Hanover, which is clearly the superior jurisdiction to the other. With us in the gallery, Angela Kelly Wiesack and her son Stephen, who is at home yet again, and he wanted to come watch us work because it was less boring than being at home. So we gave him an education in the Finance Committee this morning, and he's here to watch us work on the floor today. So if you can give the warm recognition of the Senate to Angela Kelly Wiesek and her son, Stephen.
Thank you, Senator. Would Angela and Stephen please rise? Good morning, good afternoon. I need to get my time straight, but thank you all for being here, and hope you had a good day watching the senators in action, and if you can hang around just a little while, you'll I think, see some more interesting policy being making. So that's what we do here in the Capitol. So I'd ask members of the Senate to please join me in offering Angela Kelly Wiesek and her son Stephen the warm welcome of the Senate. The senator from Franklin, Senator Stanley.
Good afternoon, Mr. President.
Good afternoon, sir. You have the floor.
Thank you, sir. I rise for the purposes of an introduction. Mr. President, members of the Senate, in the gallery today, we have two great people who do great things for us in Patrick County in Southside Virginia. In fact, it's the constitutional offices which are so essential to administering not only the collection of revenues at the local level, but also making sure that we pay for our roads and our schools and our public safety. In the gallery today, Mr. President, is our Commissioner of Revenue from Patrick County, Janet Rohr. And up there with her is also our treasurer from Patrick County, Sandra Stone. We could not do the good job in Patrick County without them. We're very lucky and so grateful to have them do what they do for us, and they do a great job. So I would ask, Mr. President, that you extend to them the warm welcome of the Senate.
Thank you, Senator. Would Janet Rohr and Sandra Stone please rise? Thank you all for being here today, and I know we had a lot of the commissioners and treasurers here, and certainly if there are any others in the gallery watching or in the rooms on the monitor, we welcome you as well. But thanks for all that you do with taxation and making sure that we behave ourselves across the Commonwealth, and I look forward to always having you all come and advocating. So I would ask the members of the Senate to please join me in offering Janet Rohr and Sandra Stone the warm welcome of the Senate. The senator from Norfolk, Senator Alexander.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise for introduction.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. In the gallery are members of the business community in Southampton Roads and the president of Tidewater Community College. They're here today to talk with us about the importance of non-credit workforce credentials to grow and diversify our economy by aligning programs, education, and skills with employer needs. Mr. President, will you please extend a warm welcome of the Senate to members of the business community and Tidewater Community College.
Thank you, Senator. Would members from Tidewater Community College please rise? Thank you all for being here today. We have 23 great community colleges across the Commonwealth, and just as the Senator said, it's really an opportunity for us to bring skills to jobs, and you all have been such an influential part of that, so we appreciate all you do for the Commonwealth. I'd ask the members of the Senate to please join me in offering members from Tidewater Community College the warm welcome of the Senate. The senator from Fauquier, Senator Vogel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise for purposes of a second introduction.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would feel very guilty if I did not introduce a very important person who's here in the gallery today. It is my legislative aide, Patricia Stiles. And once I introduced her here in the gallery on her birthday, and I made the mistake of telling the members of this body that she was very, very old. And so now I really have to make it up to her by saying glowing things about her and the hard work that she does for my constituents, the long-suffering work that she does, the hours that she spends, and what a wonderful person that she is. So I cannot allow her to sit in the gallery and not get the proper recognition. I certainly need to make that up to her. It is not her birthday, and she is, in fact, not very old. And she happens to be the person sitting there not sucking her thumb. So she also does other work, as you can see, other duties as designated. So please give her the very, very warm welcome of the Senate and my deepest appreciation for all of the hard work that she does for me. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Trish, I know you have something in your lap, so I'm going to let you keep your seat, but it's always great seeing you here. I miss seeing you up on the third floor. We used to be neighbors, but anyway, not anymore. And it's so great seeing Olivia here again. Hi, Olivia. Good morning. I'd ask the members of the Senate to please join me in offering Patricia and Olivia the warm welcome of the Senate. Senator New. The senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I rise for purposes of an introduction, sir.
Senator has the floor.
As you heard just a moment ago, there are a number of representatives from our extraordinary community college system that are with us today. Very pleased to have a group from Thomas Nelson Community College that are with us today. There's a lot of focus in the governor's budget and also by various members of the General Assembly on higher education this year. And one of the concentration of areas is trying to align education with employment opportunities. What a unique idea that is. Thomas Nelson Community College over the years has served over 16,000 students. They have a workforce development program that has involved over 12,000 individuals. They currently are focusing on an advanced integrated manufacturing program, which is designed to train multi-talented technicians and individuals to go into business. And so, Mr. President, if you would be kind enough on behalf of the senator from Newport News, Senator Miller, and the senator from Hampton, Senator Locke, to extend a very warm welcome to Dr. Devers and a number of individuals who are here from the Thomas Nelson Community College Board, including my good friend Bruce Goodson, who was foolish enough to follow me in the James City County Board of Supervisors and did a much better job than I did.
Thank you, Senator. Would members from Thomas Nelson Community College please rise? Well, thank you all for being here this afternoon. And just as the senator said, and as we introduce the other folks from community college, you all play such an integral part of the education process in Virginia and promoting economic development. And we thank you for all you do. I would ask the members of the Senate to please join me in offering members from the Thomas Nelson Community College the warm welcome of the Senate. Is there any other business to come before the Senate for the morning hour? The senator from Portsmouth, Senator Lucas.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think it's already been said that we have a number of individuals here from the Commissioner of Revenue's office today. And even though they're no longer in the gallery, I'd like to introduce the members who've come down to see me today also. Laurie K. Stevens from Dinwiddie, Wanda J. Bevel from Brunswick County, and Franklin Edmondson from the city of Portsmouth, who happens also to be the president of the Commissioners of Revenue.
Thank you, Senator. Do we have any other members of the Commissioner of Revenues or treasurers in the gallery with us? I don't see any here, Senator, and perhaps they're watching from another room, but we certainly appreciate them being here today and the good work that they do across the Commonwealth. I would ask members of the Senate to please join me in giving the commissioners and the treasurers across the Commonwealth a warm welcome of the Senate. Senator from Norfolk, Senator Alexander.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm asking for unanimous consent to introduce a Senate joint resolution designating April 29th, 2016, and each succeeding year as Public Transportation Safety Day in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate grant unanimous consent to introduce a resolution as described by the senator from Norfolk? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The consent of the Senate is granted to introduce a resolution. Any other business for the morning hour? The clerk will please report the calendar.
Senate calendar for Tuesday, January 26th.
I'm sorry, the senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
I apologize for interrupting you and the clerk. I respectfully request that the Senate now stand in recess until 12:45, and would the members of the Senate Republican Caucus please retire to our prayer meeting room as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Senator. The senior senator from Henrico. We're good. The Senate will stand in recess until 12:45. The Senate will come to order. We're going to return to the morning hour. I recognize the senator from Lynchburg, Senator Newman.
Mr. President, I rise for the purpose of an introduction.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, we are pleased today to have representatives from the Smith Mountain Lake Regional Chamber of Commerce with us today in the gallery. With the group today, Mr. President, is Barb Nocera and also Adam Lynch, Walter Hogel, and Lee Willard. Mr. President, we also have with us the Executive Director of the Smith Mountain Lake Chamber of Commerce, who is Vicki Gardner. Many of you will know Vicki because of her advocacy at the lake and advocacy of the train from Lynchburg to Roanoke that the senator from Roanoke City has been working on, and their desire to see that train stop in Bedford City. But many of you also know Vicki because of the tragedy that occurred with the unfortunate shootings at Smith Mountain Lake with the two representatives from WDBJ-7. Vicki has been a tremendous advocate for the lake. I have spent many hours on that lake and many hours with Vicki. As a matter of fact, before the tragedy, Vicki actually came to Lynchburg and once again was meeting with me and others about the train and other items related to Smith Mountain Lake. She is a courageous Virginian. She is a tremendous advocate for the Commonwealth and also for her region. Mr. President, with your concurrence, I'd like to yield to the senator from Franklin, who would like to mention a couple of items about Vicki Gardner. But before I do, I'd like to mention that the senator from Mecklenburg and the senator from Roanoke County also have a piece of the lake, and we're very grateful to join in with them. Mr. President, I'd like to yield.
Thank you, Senator. The senator from Franklin, Senator Stanton.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's a very special day to see such a beautiful woman, such an inspiration to us all, such a great friend and such a champion for economic development and for what we know is the best place to live, work, play, and raise a family. Just to see her standing above us, sitting above us in the gallery right now is all we all could ask for. She is truly a gem of Smith Mountain Lake, a jewel to us all. She is our leader and our friend and our champion, and we are just so glad to have her here today and also just to be in her presence. So with that, Mr. President, I can only tell you, along with the other leaders, business leaders that we have at Smith Mountain Lake, this is the reason why in Southside and Southwest Virginia, while we may suffer economic challenges that have been brought on years before, that when we have leadership like that that sits right up there, and especially led by Vicki Gardner, and whose husband, Tim Gardner, is one of my favorite people of all time, then we will overcome, because we will never give in, we will never give up. And as Vicki has proven, and when you do that, when you never give in and you never give up, you will always overcome, and you will live in the champion's way. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Would Vicki Gardner and members from the business community of Smith Mountain Lake please rise? Thank you all so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to visit with us today. And as the senators have said, thank you for all that you do for Smith Mountain Lake and for Virginia, especially in the setting of the terrible tragedy we had, and appreciate you all moving forward. And so we ask the members of the Senate to please join me in offering Vicki Gardner and other members from the business community of Smith Mountain Lake the warm welcome of the Senate. The clerk will, excuse me, before we move to the calendar, the senator from Rockingham, Senator Obenshain.
Mr. President, I move that the rules be suspended, the Committee on Courts of Justice be discharged from further consideration of the resolution, and that House Joint Resolution number 210 be taken up for immediate consideration.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, should the rules be suspended, the Committee for Courts of Justice be discharged from further consideration of the resolution, and House Joint Resolution number 210 be taken up for immediate consideration? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 21, noes 18.
Ayes 21, noes 18. The motion fails. The clerk will call the calendar.
Senate calendar for Tuesday, January 26, 2016. Uncontested calendar, Senate bills on third reading.
The senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I respectfully move that all the Senate bills on the third reading on the uncontested calendar, which would include all Senate bills on pages 1 through 6, which would include Senate Bill 78 through Senate Bill 545, be placed on their final passage in the block. If any senator desires to remove one of these bills from the block, please do so after the clerk has read the number of that bill.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate bills on the uncontested calendar, third reading, pages 1 through 6, Senate Bill 78 through Senate Bill 545, be placed upon their final passage in the block with the understanding that any senator desiring a bill removed from the block will do so after the clerk has read the number of the bill. All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. The bills are before us in the block. The clerk will please read the number of the bills.
Senate Bill 78, Senate Bill 79, Senate Bill 99, Senate Bill 103.
Can Senate Bill 99 come out of the block?
Without objection, Senate Bill 99 will come out of the block.
Senate Bill 103, Senate Bill 122, Senate Bill 266, Senate Bill 280, Senate Bill 281, Senate Bill 359, Senate Bill 366, Senate Bill 382, Senate Bill 407, Senate Bill 545.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The question is, shall the bills in the block pass? That is, all bills except for Senate Bill 99 on page 2. All in favor of passage of the bills will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. The bills in the block pass. Turning page 2, Senate Bill 99, the senator from Chesapeake, Senator Cosgrove.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, I apologize for having to speak on this bill, but this is a bill that everyone in this chamber needs to be proud of voting for. This bill rights an egregious wrong, which was unintended, but in October of 2012, Army Sergeant Robert Billings was coming back from a mission in Afghanistan in his Stryker vehicle when he went over an IED, improvised explosive device, and he was grievously wounded. He was flown from the scene of that accident to a tent in Kandahar undergoing medical procedures, where unfortunately his injuries were too much for him to sustain, and he died. Last year, the citizens of Virginia came out in support of a real estate tax reduction for spouses and families of those who have been killed in action. The problem that we had, we depended on the DOD definition of killed in action, which did not cover this brave young man. Their definition of killed in action is immediately killed and not taken to a medical facility. Sergeant Billings leaves a wife and 4 children in Southern Virginia Beach, and she applied for this tax exemption. And in all fairness to the Commissioners of Revenue, they were unsure how to proceed with this. So this bill, which I am carrying and then Delegate Knight is carrying, has been one who really carried the water on this one, would rectify that situation and allow this widow and her children to receive the benefits that they so rightly deserve. Again, I'm sorry for imposing on your time, but I hope you will support this bill. Thank you.
The question is, shall Senate Bill 99 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? If any senators desire to change their votes, the clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. The bill passes.
Regular calendar, Senate bills on third reading. Senate Bill 447, a bill relating to employment of special counsel by the Attorney General or Governor.
Senator from Rockingham, Senator Obenshain.
Mr. President, I move the passage of the bill and speaking to it.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, members of the Senate, this bill is a transparency bill, relates to the use of outside counsel by the Office of the Attorney General. Yesterday, I spoke briefly about current issue that raises concerns about transparency and also about the use of contingency fees by attorneys general. This bill was put in to do a number of things. One is not to limit the ability of the Attorney General's office to utilize outside counsel. There are important circumstances under which it's necessary to do so because of the lack of resources in the office, because of special expertise outside of the office. It is appropriate in certain circumstances to do that. However, what this bill does is it acknowledges that the Attorney General ought to make a finding of why it is that the Commonwealth's law firm sees that it is necessary to utilize outside counsel. And it also seeks to limit the circumstances under which the Commonwealth utilizes contingency fee law firms. Now, for those of you who are lawyers, you understand that contingency fees are there for a real purpose. Traditionally, lawyers bill for their time, and it's not inexpensive to retain counsel based upon their time. But there are certain folks, businesses and otherwise, who wouldn't have access to the judicial system if they had to pay a lawyer on an hourly basis. And for those circumstances, it is clearly appropriate, in order to give them access to the judicial system, that alternative fee arrangements, including contingency fees, were established. The Commonwealth of Virginia, however, is not one of those clients that has difficulty in gaining access to the judicial system. And the circumstances pursuant to which it's appropriate for the Commonwealth to utilize contingency fee counsel ought to be very limited. This bill does not prohibit it. It limits the use, and it requires the Attorney General to explain why he or she is using contingency fee counsel. Moreover, it caps the amount of contingency fees that can be recovered by plaintiff's counsel, typically New York, West Coast, Gulf Coast plaintiff's counsel. And it limits it to a scale that tops out at $50 million. $50 million of a recovery to pay for counsel. Now, I don't think that that's an unreasonable amount. Somewhat surprisingly, the representative from the Attorney General's office appeared in the General Laws Committee and testified in response to questions that they were concerned that that's not enough, and that there are circumstances under which they would want to pay a higher contingency fee in excess of $50 million to counsel. Now, I just would want to remind the members of the body that when we're paying more of settlements and more of judgments and verdicts to Gulf Coast trial lawyers, those are dollars that otherwise would be coming into our budget or coming into the Virginia retirement system, would be available to pay teachers and state troopers and state retirees. I pulled a response from last year's response to a Freedom of Information request that I submitted. And I asked for information about outside counsel utilized on a contingency fee. And one category that showed up prominently was counsel utilized for the Virginia retirement system for asset recovery matters, to basically sue stockbrokers and brokerage houses and in securities fraud lawsuits. And the list, I got 2, 4, 6 law firms. A firm in Berkeley, California, a firm in San Diego, California, a firm in Radnor, Pennsylvania, a firm in New York, another in New York, and another in New York. These are the folks that we are paying these contingency fees out to, instead of to our state employees and to fund our priorities here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Mr. President, I would ask that the members of the body support this bill. It is an important transparency bill. It requires when contingency fees or outside counsel is utilized that reports be filed and that disclosures be made. And, you know, with the increased focus on ethics, I think it's important for us to know in an Attorney General's office, or for that matter in any governmental office, if they are contracting with outside parties, to know for whether those outside parties are also making contributions to the office. This doesn't cast any stones. It simply assures that we have that level, or at least the maximum level of accountability and transparency that we can possibly have. So with that, Mr. President, I would ask that this bill pass.
Thank you, Senator. The senator from Fairfax City, Senator Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to speak in opposition to the bill.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, I know that trial attorneys don't get a lot of sympathy, and they probably don't deserve a lot. One of the jokes I have when I go door to door is occasionally I'll knock on a door and people tell me they don't like politicians. So I say, well, did I tell you I'm a trial attorney? And see if that can get their sympathy. Usually doesn't. But the point is, people that are in industries or that are in professions that create wealth, this is typically how they're compensated. And when a trial attorney has a controversial, high-profile case, they're in a position of oftentimes creating wealth where that wealth would not otherwise exist. And let me tell you, you can have whatever percentage you want, but that percentage times zero will always equal zero. And if you don't hire the right counsel, and if you don't give your Attorney General the discretion to hire the right counsel, you will end up with zero. We've had some pretty major settlements in the past generation: tobacco, mortgage fraud, Wall Street fraud. These are cases with a lot of money, hundreds of millions of dollars often at stake. And if you look at these limits, these may make sense today standing on this floor, but 10 years from now, and remember, we're putting this into the code without any sort of cost of living adjustment or anything else. 10 years from now, when you talk up to a trial attorney that any recovery over $25 million, they'll only get 5% of, and they say, well, $25 million, we're talking about a Wall Street bank that made billions off a particular transaction that I'm suing. Basically, what you're doing is you're taking away an opportunity to create wealth on behalf of the Commonwealth. And so we might lose out on a tobacco settlement. We might lose out on a foreclosure fraud settlement. We might lose out on a Wall Street fraud settlement. And that's going to cost our taxpayers. You know, the Attorney General runs for office and they get elected, and at some point you got to let them run that office. You know, I'm not oblivious to the fact for 20 years, folks from your side of the aisle had control of the Attorney General's office, and nobody brought this legislation. And in fact, we were able to enter settlements that created wealth for our taxpayers, that brought money back to Virginia that otherwise we would have lost. And now we got somebody in office from the Democratic Party, and you may not agree with all his policy decisions, but you know what? He won, and he gets a chance to operate that office for 4 years. And if you don't think he did a good job, then pull him out. But the bottom line is, if you look at the statute already, there's already a competitive bidding process to have these contracts. What we're doing is we're trying to micromanage that process without knowing any of the details or any of the future circumstances that might apply. So look, I get it. I mean, you're saying, oh my gosh, some Gulf Coast attorney's going to come in and take money away from teachers and state police. But what you're really doing is we're losing opportunities to create wealth for our taxpayers by putting these artificial limitations on it. Ironically, I probably sound like a Republican when I talk this way, but I do believe in wealth creation. To my friends on the other side of the aisle, give me a call. I'll help you get that wealth created. But the bottom line is we can't create wealth for our taxpayers if we pass this type of legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. The senator from Buckingham, Senator Garrett.
Excuse me. Speaking of the bill, Mr. President, I've had the honor of practicing law for, well, I don't even know, 13 years. And I've thought that it was something to be able to seek justice and pursue truth. But I have never considered myself someone who created wealth. And I still am having a difficult time wrapping my brain around how any lawyer and any suit contemplated is creating wealth. Now, they may well be redistributing it, but I don't think they're creating it. So I would take exception to that and say perhaps some of us attorneys hold ourselves in higher regard than perhaps we merit. I just want to point out one statistic. There are 2,093 public schools in the Commonwealth of Virginia. A $50 million cap would allow $23,889, or what I think is equivalent to the state share, depending upon your LCI, of a whole new teacher in every single public school in Virginia for a year, the state share. So if that's not enough money to compensate some attorneys, then perhaps we're too well paid. I just don't understand why this isn't a reasonable restraint on the expenditure of the tax dollars granted to the Commonwealth by the people who we purport to serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. The senior senator from Loudoun, Senator Black.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a while since I attended law school, but I remember the discussion about contingency fees and the need to have contingency fees in order that individuals who had very little means of getting into court could simply say, look, if you'll take my case, then you can share in the proceeds. And that made sense. However, the Commonwealth of Virginia is not one of those destitute individuals who has suffered. We have considerable resources. We're able to fund our cases, and for the most part, I frankly think we ought to just pay the hourly fee that we need to. At the same time, I understand. I don't understand the intricacies of the Attorney General's office to the extent that I would say, well, we just shouldn't have it at all. But $50 million is a whole lot of money. And I don't care how big the litigation is. I mean, that is a tremendous amount of money. And frankly, the idea that because the recovery is so great that it's only fair that the attorneys share in that, well, I believe that people ought to be able to get recompense for their work, and if they do really good work, it ought to be great recompense. But I honestly believe that if we cannot make a go of it at $50 million, there's something wrong. I think that's sufficient, and that cap is way high. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. The senator from Rockingham, Senator Obenshain.
Mr. President, just very briefly, if I can wrap this up. First of all, before too many members of the body shed too many tears for trial lawyers, I'm one too. I would love to have a case that generates a $50 million fee, and I think that the firm of Peterson and Obenshain, we could probably survive for just a couple of years on that, and I'd be more than happy to team up with anybody on a case of that magnitude or nature. I would also point out that, at least anybody in this chamber, I would also point out that before we shed too many tears for these Gulf Coast, New York, and West Coast trial lawyers, that we remember that that $50 million cap is multiplied by the number of states that they roll up into these lawsuits. They are not representing just Virginia. They take these ideas, these so-called entrepreneurial ventures that these what were they called? Wealth creators, that these wealth creators come up with, and they take them from state to state, marketing them to activist attorney generals across the country in order to build these massive claims, generating legal fees in the hundreds of millions of dollars. I would also point out that when we are talking about when we're talking about whether we're creating wealth, there's only one category of person for whom wealth is being created by these lawsuits. These lawsuits are remedial in nature. They are to right a wrong. They are to recover money owed. It's not to create wealth. It's to bring back money to the state treasury for those teachers and state troopers and our priorities that belong to them already. And these contingency fees are taking that money away from those causes and giving them to the trial lawyer who handled it. And that is the only person for whom wealth is created through these claims. Now, I will finally wrap up by saying that if we're worried about the cost of living for these $100 million lawyers, I told some of the opponents, including a representative of the Attorney General's office, I said, $50 million isn't enough? Tell me what is. If a cost of living adjustment would help you get more comfortable with this, if it's 60 million, 70 million, tell me what would make you satisfied with it. They wouldn't give us a number because they want to utilize this for the kind of activism that these lawsuits are really not intended for. So if you want to protect our teachers, our state troopers, our employees, and our priorities, you'll vote for this reasonable, common sense measure. If we're shedding tears for the trial lawyers along the Gulf Coast of Texas and Louisiana, you will vote against this.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall Senate Bill 447 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 21, noes 18, Rule 36-1.
Ayes 21, noes 18, Rule 36-1, the bill passes.
Senate Bill 43, a bill relating to time of municipal elections.
Senator from Grayson, Senator Carrico.
Mr. President, can this bill go by for the day?
Without objection, Senate Bill 43 will go by for the day.
Senate Bill 56, a bill relating to cutting of grass, weeds, and other foreign growth.
Senator from Hampton, Senator Locke.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the bill pass.
Senator has the floor.
And Mr. President, let me first state that this is not a grass cutting bill. This is declaratory in nature, taken from the senator from Bath. Senate Bill 56 provides that local governments will allow for, it actually explains that other foreign growth includes shrubs and trees that have overtaken vacant developed property. So it simply explains that foreign growth includes shrubs and trees. So I move that the bill pass.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall Senate Bill 56 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 27, noes 11.
Ayes 27, noes 11. The bill passes.
Senate Bill 69, a bill relating to accepted forms of voter identification.
The junior senator from Loudoun, Senator Wexler.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the bill pass, and speaking to that motion.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you. This bill would add another category of photo IDs to those that would be acceptable to allow people to vote, and those are photo ID cards issued to residents or employees of any private entity that's licensed in whole or in part by the Department of Health, Department of Social Services, DMAS, or DBHDS. So what we're talking about here are basically nursing homes, assisted living facilities, continuing care facilities, entities like that. According to the Department of Social Services, there are about 30,000 Virginians currently living in nursing homes, and more than that actually living in assisted living facilities at this time, and the numbers are only increasing as time goes by. Most of the people who live in these facilities are seniors, they're retirees, and for a lot of them, they don't have driver's licenses, or they have expired driver's licenses. And this legislation would simply allow them to use their photo ID from that facility to prove their identity when going to vote. Seniors are one of the groups that are most likely to be negatively impacted by voter ID laws. However, they are among the most active voters if we let them vote. So we already have photo IDs that are allowed for students. We already allow photo IDs for working age people with their employee IDs. And this would help level the playing field for retirees and people who are in nursing homes. And I ask that the bill pass.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall Senate Bill 69 pass? All in favor of the motion will record the votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 29, noes 11.
Ayes 29, noes 11. The bill passes.
Senate Bill 361, a bill relating to tree conservation ordinance notice.
Senator from Arlington, Senator Vivola.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the bill pass. Speaking to the motion.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you. This bill would allow jurisdictions in Planning District 8, which is essentially Northern Virginia, to post signs on private property when that private property is proposed to be redeveloped with a single-family home, and an infill grading lot plan has been filed, and it will be before the governing body for a decision. This is permissive. It is one of those issues where neighbors want to know what's going on in their neighborhood. The Home Builders Association does not oppose the bill. And this bill passed a subcommittee in the House, the subcommittee of the County, Cities, and Towns by a vote of 8-1. I think this is a common sense bill, and I ask the body to please vote for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall Senate Bill 361 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 23, noes 17.
Ayes 23, noes 17. The bill passes.
Senate Bill 420, a bill relating to voter registration information required on application, adjudication of incapacity or felony conviction.
Senator from Alexandria, Senator Eben.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill pass.
Senator has the floor.
Speaking to the bill. This bill has to do with the voter registration application and some information that we currently collect that I don't believe is necessary to making sure that we have accurate voter rolls. First, right now, all voters who are ever judgmentally incapacitated must check a box when registering to vote that they were judgmentally incapacitated, regardless of whether they were ever disqualified from voting in conjunction with that. This bill qualifies the requirement so that only those who were disqualified from voting would check the box. And then further, there are two requirements for dates on the application if you had your rights lost because you were a felon or because you were judgmentally incapacitated and specifically had your rights suspended. We heard testimony from the Department of Elections that they have a database of when people's rights were restored, making the date on the application unnecessary. And further, I would say, a lot of times people don't remember a specific date that something happens. I know some people say they don't remember anniversaries, but I would say how many of us remember, of our long-serving members, remember the exact day that you were sworn in? I mean, you know, would you remember what day you got a letter from the Secretary of the Commonwealth that your rights were restored, or what the date was in the envelope? So I ask the bill pass.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall Senate Bill 420 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 26, noes 14.
Ayes 26, noes 14. The bill passes.
Senate Bill 446, a bill to provide for the submission to the voters of a proposed amendment to the Constitution of Virginia, adding to Article 1 a section numbered 11-A relating to the right to work.
Senator from Rockingham, Senator Obenshain.
Could that bill go by for the day?
Without objection, Senate Bill 446 will go by for the day.
Mr. President.
Mr. President. Senator from Franklin, Senator Stanley.
Mr. President, having voted on the prevailing side of Senate Bill 361 by which it passed, I move for the reconsideration of that bill.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the vote by which Senate Bill 361 passed be reconsidered? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, no 0.
40, no 0. The motion is agreed to. The senator from Arlington.
Mr. President, having previously explained the bill, I do ask that the ladies and gentlemen of the Senate vote for it.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall Senate Bill 361 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their votes. Aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 25, noes 15.
Ayes 25, noes 15. The bill passes.
Uncontested calendar, Senate bills on second reading.
Senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd now move that all Senate bills on the second reading on both the uncontested and regular calendar, which would include all Senate bills on pages 9 through 22, including Senate Bill 4 through Senate Bill 615, be engrossed and advanced to the third reading in the block after the adoption of any amendments. If any senator desires to remove a bill from the block, please do so after the clerk has read the number of that bill.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall all Senate bills on second reading on the uncontested calendar on pages 9 through 22, Senate Bill 4 through Senate Bill 615, be engrossed and advanced to their third reading in the block after the adoption of amendments thereto, that any senator desiring a bill to remove a bill from the block will do so after the clerk has read the number of the bill. All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to.
Senate Bill 4, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services with amendment.
The senator from Franklin, Senator Stanley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I now move that the committee amendment be agreed to.
Question is, shall the committee amendment be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendment is agreed to.
Senate Bill 25, reported from the Committee on Transportation. Senate Bill 37, reported from the Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources with a substitute.
Senator from Grayson, Senator Carrico.
Move the committee substitute.
Question is, shall the substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The substitute is agreed to.
Senate Bill 39, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services with amendment.
Senator from Grayson, Senator Carrico.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the committee amendment.
Question is, shall the committee amendment be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendment is agreed to.
Senate Bill 83, reported from the Committee on Education and Health. Senate Bill 107, reported from the Committee on Transportation. Senate Bill 124, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services with amendment.
Senator from Franklin, Senator Stanley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I now move that the committee amendment be agreed to.
Question is, shall the committee amendment be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendment is agreed to.
Senate Bill 152, reported from the Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources. Senate Bill 154, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services with a substitute.
Senator from Spotsylvania, Senator Reeves.
Mr. President, I move the committee substitute.
Question is, shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The substitute is agreed to.
Senate Bill 176, reported from the Committee on Education and Health. Senate Bill 198, reported from the Committee for Courts of Justice. Senate Bill 250, reported from the Committee on Education and Health with a substitute.
The senior senator from Loudoun, Senator Black.
Mr. President, I move the committee substitute.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The substitute is agreed to.
Senate Bill 252, reported from the Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources with amendment.
The senator from Mecklenburg, Senator Ruff.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the committee amendment.
Question is, shall the committee amendment be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendment is agreed to.
Senate Bill 268, reported from the Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources. Senate Bill 284, reported from the Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources with a substitute.
Senator from Accomack, Senator Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the committee substitute.
Question is, shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is agreed to.
Senate Bill 299, reported from the Committee on Transportation with amendment.
Senator from Alexandria, Senator Evans.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the committee amendment be agreed to.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, should the committee amendment be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendment is agreed to.
Senate Bill 307, reported from the Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources. Senate Bill 322, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services with the substitute.
Senator from Alexandria, Senator Eben.
I move the committee substitute be agreed to.
Question is, shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is agreed to.
Senate Bill 328, reported from the Committee on Education and Health. Senate Bill 348, reported from the Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources. Senate Bill 349, reported from the Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources. Senate Bill 356, reported from the Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources with a substitute.
Senator from Bath County, Senator Deeds.
Mr. President, I move that the substitute be agreed to.
Question is, shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The substitute is agreed to.
Senate Bill 360, reported from the Committee on Education and Health. Senate Bill 373, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services with amendments.
Senator from Alexandria, Senator Eben.
Mr. President, I move the committee amendments be agreed to.
The question is, shall the committee amendments be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendments are agreed to.
Senate Bill 375, reported from the Committee on Transportation. Senate Bill 399, reported from the Committee on Education and Health. Senate Bill 425, reported from the Committee on Education and Health. Senate Bill 434, reported from the Committee on Transportation with amendments.
The senator from Southern Fairfax County, Senator Barker.
Mr. President, I move that the amendments be agreed to.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the committee amendments be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are agreed to.
Senate Bill 443, reported from the Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources with amendments.
The senator from Augusta, Senator Hanger.
Mr. President, I move the committee amendments be agreed to.
The question is, shall the committee amendments be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are agreed to.
Senate Bill 448, reported from the Committee on Transportation with amendments.
Senator from Rockingham, Senator Obenshain.
Mr. President, I move the committee amendments be agreed to.
The question is, shall the committee amendments be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendments are agreed to.
Senate Bill 464, reported from the Committee on Transportation. Senate Bill 479, reported from the Committee for Courts of Justice. Senate Bill 480, reported from the Committee on Education and Health. Senate Bill 502, reported from the Committee on Education and Health. Senate Bill 529, reported from the Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources. Senate Bill 544, reported from the Committee for Courts of Justice. Senate Bill 569, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services with a substitute.
Senator from Mecklenburg, Senator Ruff.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the committee substitute.
The question is, shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The substitute is agreed to.
Senate Bill 573, reported from the Committee on Education and Health. Senate Bill 608, reported from the Committee for Courts of Justice. Senate Bill 615, reported for the Committee for Courts of Justice.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The question is, shall the Senate bills be engrossed in advance to their third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bills are engrossed in advance to their third reading.
Regular calendar, Senate bills on second reading. Senate Bill 208, a bill relating to the statewide fire prevention code, state fire marshal, consumer fireworks penalties.
The senator from Buckingham, Senator Garrett.
Mr. President, I move the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, should the bill be engrossed in advance to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed in advance to its third reading.
Senate Bill 1, a bill relating to the excise tax on peanuts, reported from the Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources.
The senator from Portsmouth, Senator Lucas.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
The question is, should the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 21, a bill to require the Department of Environmental Quality to receive approval from the General Assembly for a state plan to regulate carbon dioxide emissions from existing stationary sources prior to submitting the state plan to the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency for approval. Reported from the Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources with a substitute.
Senator from Russell County, Senator Chafin.
Mr. President, I move that the bill be engrossed and advanced to its...
Just move the substitute first.
Mr. President, I move the committee substitute.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The substitute is agreed to. The senator from Russell.
Mr. President, I move that the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 23, a bill relating to grand larceny and certain property crimes threshold. Reported from the Committee for Courts of Justice with a substitute.
The senator from Spotsylvania, Senator Reeves.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the committee substitute.
The question is, shall the substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The substitute is agreed to. The senator from Spotsylvania.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we engross and advance to a third reading.
The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 48, a bill relating to carrying a concealed handgun, permit not required. Reported from the Committee for Courts of Justice.
The senior senator from Loudoun, Senator Black.
Mr. President, I move that the bill be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 91, a bill relating to license plates for emergency vehicles. Reported from the Committee on Transportation with amendments.
The senator from Western Fairfax County, Senator Marsden.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the committee amendments be agreed to.
The question is, shall the committee amendments be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendments are agreed to. The senator from Western Fairfax County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move now that the bill be engrossed and passed to its third reading.
The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 126, a bill relating to alcoholic beverage control, mixed beverage licenses for certain properties. Reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services.
Senator from Franklin, Senator Stanley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
The question is, should the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 163, a bill relating to local regulation driving in flooded areas, no wake. Reported from the Committee on Transportation with a substitute, and there is a floor amendment to the substitute.
The senator from Hampton, Senator Locke.
Mr. President.
Senator from Lynchburg, Senator Newman.
Mr. President, I move that we waive the reading of the floor amendment.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Senator from Hampton, Senator Locke.
Mr. President, I move that we adopt the committee substitute.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The substitute is agreed to. The senator from Lynchburg, Senator Newman.
Mr. President, I now move that we waive the reading of the floor amendment.
The question is, shall the reading of the floor amendment be waived? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The reading of the floor amendment is waived. The senator from Lynchburg.
Mr. President, this bill is a bill that talks about driving in flooded areas and trying to keep those wakes from damaging property. The committee considered the bill for a good bit and made some adjustments. In working with the patron, the floor amendment adds the provision that you need to have some type of signage up indicating that there will be a penalty if a wake occurs. Mr. President, I move that we agree to the floor amendment.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the floor amendment be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The floor amendment is agreed to. The senator from Hampton, Senator Locke.
Mr. President, I move that the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 175, a bill relating to concealed handgun permits, access to Virginia Criminal Information Network, reported from the Committee for Courts of Justice.
The senator from Stafford, Senator Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd move the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
The question is, should the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 197, a bill relating to Interstate 73 Corridor Development Fund and Program, reported from the Committee on Transportation with a substitute.
The senator from Franklin, Senator Stanley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that this bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading unless the senator to my left has another idea for it.
Well, it'd be a good idea to move the substitute.
Mr. President, I now move the committee substitute be agreed to.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The substitute is agreed to. The senator from Franklin, Senator Stanley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I yield to the senator to my left.
For what purpose does the senator rise?
Mr. Chairman, I like to speak to the bill. I need to re-refer the bill.
That's fine if you want to make the motion to re-refer.
I'd like to make a motion to re-refer the bill.
To
Senate Finance.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the bill be re-referred to Senate Finance? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. No. The ayes have it. The bill is re-referred to Finance.
Senate Bill 211, a bill relating to public schools' physical activity requirement, reported from the Committee on Education and Health.
The senator from Newport News, Senator Miller.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 350, a bill relating to medical and mental health treatments of prisoners incapable of giving consent, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services.
The senator from Bath County, Senator Deeds.
Mr. President, I move that the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 363, a bill relating to rights of persons with disabilities in public places and places of public accommodation, fraudulent representation of a service dog penalty, reported from the Committee on Education and Health and with the floor, and from the Committee on reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services, and there's a floor amendment.
The senator from Spotsylvania, Senator Reeves.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the reading of the floor amendment be waived.
The question is, shall the reading of the floor amendment be waived? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The reading of the floor amendment is waived. The senator from Spotsylvania.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the amendment be agreed to.
Mr. President.
The senior senator from Enrico, Senator McEachin.
Would the senator yield for a question?
Would the senator from Spotsylvania yield for a question?
I would, Mr. President.
Senator.
Mr. President, I would ask the senator the use of the word or the phrase "when it is not obvious what service a dog provides." Is that not a subjective test that could lead to mischief for the senator's well-intentioned bill?
The senator from Spotsylvania.
Mr. President, I can only answer that this floor amendment comes out of the discussion that we had in Social Service and Rehabilitation at the request of some of those that deal with social services and the federal ADA. So this language, while I'm not a practicing attorney, if the senator would have an amendment to it, I would consider it a friendly amendment. I'm just trying to put it in the right posture. This was to codify in our language what the federal requirements for ADA is, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. The senior senator from Henrico.
Further question, Mr.
Would the senator yield for an additional question?
Yes, Mr. President.
Yield.
Mr. President, I would ask the senator, if he has it available to him, can he share with the body what those requirements of the ADA are that he is trying to meet with this language?
The senator from Spotsylvania.
Thank you, Mr. President. Certainly. Under the ADA currently, if you are an establishment, restaurant per se, you can only ask a person that's entering that establishment one question and one question only, and that is, what service does your dog perform? And that's it. And so this is a bill tried to, for the most part, curb what we found to be some folks out there, believe it or not, that want to put a vest on a dog that doesn't perform any kind of service. And so that's what it's designed to do. But under ADA, that's the only question you can ask, Mr. President.
Further question, Mr. President?
Would the senator yield for an additional question?
Absolutely.
Yield, Senator.
And I apologize to the senator because I mean the bill no harm, but I'm forced to ask that if the ADA allows only one question to be asked, then why does your proposed amendment allow two questions to be asked?
Senator from Spotsylvania.
Mr. President, I would simply say to the gentleman that this amendment was written by those who requested it from social services. Again, I would reiterate, if the fine senator would like to scribe or take out, I would consider it a friendly amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President.
And with that, Mr. President, I would move the amendment or substitute be agreed to.
The question is, shall the floor amendment rather be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The floor amendment is agreed to. The senator from Spotsylvania.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would now move that the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 401, a bill relating to Crohn's disease, colitis, and irritable bowel syndrome, identification cards, and information. Reported from the Committee on Education and Health with a substitute.
The senator from Western Fairfax County, Senator Marsden.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the substitute be agreed to.
The question is, shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The substitute is agreed to. The senator from Western Fairfax County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Regular calendar Senate Joint Resolutions on third reading. Senate Joint Resolution 1, ratifying the Equal Rights Amendment to the United States Constitution.
The senator from Eastern Fairfax County, Senator Surville.
Mr. President, I move the resolution passed, and speaking to that motion.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, this resolution you have in front of you is for ratification of the Equal Rights Amendment. It's something that I think this body has seen several times. I have 5 quick points I want to make about it really quick. First of all, this resolution has been ratified. The ERA was ratified by the Senate 2011, 12, 14, and 15. So this will be number 5. Number 2, Virginia is one of 22 states that currently has gender equality in our Constitution. Section 11, Article 1 of the Constitution of Virginia currently says that any person, all people have the right to be free from government discrimination on the basis of religious conviction, race, color, sex, or national origin. So the equal rights have been codified in our Constitution since 1971. This is something that's not new to Virginia. It's a Virginia value. Third thing I want to say really quick is that this amendment is important. It does have legal effect. And if any of the lawyers or anybody wants to have a lawyer discussion about why it's important that we put the Equal Rights Amendment in the United States Constitution, notwithstanding Title IX or Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, it does have legal effect, and we need to do it, and I'm happy to get into that if anybody wants to. Fourth thing I'll say is that this is not too late. I think everybody here knows that in 1992, we ratified the 27th Amendment to the United States Constitution 203 years after it was adopted. And the courts have looked at that, and they have said that in Article 5 of the United States Constitution, we have a reasonable period of time to adopt it. It can be reopened, and it is not too late. We can still ratify this. And the last thing I'll say, Mr. President, is I know there's some concern. I've heard some concern about whether or not this plays in any way into the reproductive choice issues that have been discussed. The Equal Rights Amendment does not have to do with that. Those issues arise under the penumbra of the First Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment. They do not arise under equal protection analysis by the courts. They're totally separate issues, does not apply, and that should not be an issue for anybody. And just in closing, Mr. President, I would say that it is in our Constitution. Equal rights are a Virginia value. It's been in our Constitution since 1971. I would also say that aside from the ability to reproduce, the possession of a Y chromosome has not really been proven to have much of an advantage otherwise. And I know that some people probably would say that women not only should be equal, but perhaps they're more equal than men. I'm not willing to quite go that far. But I will say that on behalf of the women of this state, I think it's important that we continue to ratify or send the message, ratify this amendment so that women in this state will have equal protection law going forward. Not only women today, but my daughters and hopefully my grandchildren, my granddaughters in the future. I think it's something we need to do. I would hope that the body would pass the resolution.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the resolution pass? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 21, noes 19.
Ayes 21, noes 19. The resolution passes.
Senate Joint Resolution 70, proposing an amendment to the Constitution of Virginia by adding in Article 1 a section numbered 11-A relating to the right to work.
Senator from Rockingham, Senator Obenshain.
Mr. President, could that go by for the day?
Without objection, Senate Joint Resolution 70 will go by for the day. The senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Inquire the clerk, does that complete today's calendar?
Yes, sir.
The senator from Hampton, Senator Locke.
Thank you, Mr. President. A point of personal privilege.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today, the governor announced employment levels in Virginia are the highest in the Commonwealth's history. In December 2015, employment levels reached 3,856,100. Virginia's seasonally adjusted unemployment rate was 4.2% and is below December's national rate of 5%. Furthermore, it is the lowest in the southeast states and the third best rate among states east of the Mississippi. December was the 21st consecutive month of year-over-year employment growth in the Commonwealth, and at 1.5% is the highest growth since September 2011. This shows that the new Virginia economy is picking up steam, but we must not let up. Now is the time to invest in education, transportation, and building a 21st century workforce. The governor's budget highlights these economic development pillars, and we should work together to see them to fruition. When we put Virginians before politics, the whole Commonwealth prospers. Governor McAuliffe also announced today that PrintPak, one of the largest flexible packaging converters in the United States, will invest $25.7 million to expand its manufacturing operation in the city of Newport News. Virginia successfully competed against Missouri for this project, which will create 50 new jobs in the Commonwealth. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. The senator from Arlington, Senator Favola.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise on a point of personal privilege.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to take a moment to just talk about the importance of women's health care, especially access to contraceptive health care. Although the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention tell us that we have made great progress as a country, 3 in 10 women in the United States actually become pregnant before the age of 20, and this is a significantly higher percentage than those percentages in other countries. I think as leaders in the Commonwealth, we have an opportunity to act. We have an opportunity to make our women and our families healthier. The governor has proposed in his budget what we call long-acting reversible contraceptives, or LARCs. This program actually has been a pilot program in the state of Colorado. And Colorado found that this program saved that state $42 million in avoidance of Medicaid costs. Essentially, for every dollar invested, that Colorado invested in this program, they received $5 in return, or it would be a return in savings. There was a reduction in teenage pregnancies, but more importantly, there was a 42% reduction in abortions from that cohort that participated in LARCs. I would encourage us all to support this program. I also want to move on to say this month, in fact, it was last Friday, it was the 43rd anniversary of that landmark decision of Roe versus Wade. In that decision, the Supreme Court said that the Constitution really protects the right to privacy for every woman. And as we have discussed this issue time and again in the Senate, I think many of us have come to the conclusion that a woman's decision to have an abortion is a very personal decision. It is a decision that she and her doctor and her faith leader should talk about, but certainly not politicians getting involved with. I want you to know, and many of you do, that prior to the 1973 decision, thousands of women died each year because they did not have access to safe abortions. Aside from protecting a woman's health and her right to privacy, Wade versus Roe also expanded opportunities for women to participate equally in society. And I quote, and this was from a Planned Parenthood case, Planned Parenthood versus Casey, that went before the Supreme Court. The ability of women, quote, the ability of women to participate equally in the economic and social life of the nation has been facilitated by their ability to control their reproductive lives. There was a recent study done, and this was done by NARAL, that 99% of women will use birth control at some point in their lives, and 1 out of 3 women will have an abortion. The actions of this General Assembly in recent sessions are really out of line with where most Virginians view the role of government. I believe that the transvaginal ultrasound requirement, the 24-hour waiting period, the TRAP legislation were really intended to intimidate women and to erode our constitutional rights. 7 out of 10 Virginians also agree that government has no place in the doctor's office and that a woman should not be prevented from accessing an abortion within the construct of Roe versus Wade. I do want to note also that this morning, and I know these issues are very passionate, and I know many of us have very strong views on this, but we really are a country of laws, and I really believe we are stronger because we're a country of laws. And this morning, the Richmond Times-Dispatch reported that a Houston grand jury investigated the undercover footage of Planned Parenthood and found no wrongdoing, and instead indicted an anti-abortion activist involved in making the videos that targeted the handling of the fetal tissues in the clinics. I think that was a surprising result, but that was a result. Where we have had a lot of agreement has been around the protection of women from sexual assault and domestic violence, and I'm glad we have made progress in that area. 85% of domestic violence victims are women, and nearly 1/3 of all women murdered were killed by an intimate partner. About 4,000 women die each year due to domestic violence, and 1 in 4 women will experience domestic violence at some point in their life. I do want to note, though, that a woman's chances of being killed by her abuser increases more than 500 times if he has access to a firearm. We, as leaders in the Senate, do have many opportunities. We have opportunities to improve the quality of life for all Virginians. I do hope we will have the foresight and the courage to act, and I do hope that our actions will actually enable women, empower women, and treat women with the dignity and respect that they deserve. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. The senator from Western Fairfax County, Senator Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. President. Rise for a point of personal privilege.
Senator has the floor.
We just had a big big storm, Mr. President, and our governor was the first to declare a state of emergency. He did so on January the 21st, and following that declaration, state agencies immediately identified and positioned resources to speed response and recovery efforts. Multiple state agencies got engaged in response, including VDOT, Virginia Department of Health, Virginia State Police, Virginia National Guard, and Virginia Defense Force, and Virginia Department of Emergency Management. And the scores are starting to come in, Mr. President. We put 9,500 crew members out on the streets. 13,000 pieces of equipment were put into play to cover the 57,867 road miles in Virginia. The amount of salt put out, 176,000 tons. Liquid salt, 394,000 gallons. Sand, 31,312 tons. Our state police responded to 10,615 calls for service. They dealt with 1,750 accidents and 2,952 disabled vehicles. Our National Guard deployed 535 people, drove 34,000 miles, and helped in 124 response calls. You know, Mr. President, nothing is ever perfect, and there are still some folks who haven't been adequately dug out yet, but for the first time, I received calls from people that cleanup efforts started right away as the storm was beginning to dump snow, at least in my county in Fairfax, Virginia. And I want to thank the governor for his leadership and all the state employees and local first responders involved in this response to this amazingly big storm. And Mr. President, we're still the best managed state in the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. The senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Point of personal privilege.
Senator has the floor.
I do not have any prepared remarks, but I would like to transition from highway issues and some of the volatile social issues that have been previously spoken about, back to some economic issues. As all of you are certainly aware, this year is an even year, and we will be adopting the two-year budget. And I can share with you that the senator from Augusta and I feel the weight of stewardship responsibility that we have accepted, particularly in the light of some of the retirements that we have recently experienced and the loss of a significant institutional knowledge. As I listen to some of the effusive comments about the economy and the governor, I really think it's important that we temper this exuberance with some realities. If you go back and check the employment history of the Commonwealth of Virginia and the number of new jobs that were created over the last 10 years, you will find that there was a peak of approximately, 160,000 jobs that were created. And currently we're running along about 33,000 or 35,000 on an annual basis. I would further suggest to you that if you were to look at the George Mason study, which looked at the number of jobs, particularly in Northern Virginia, that had been displaced during the recession and the backfilling of those jobs, is a fairly revealing fact that it comes out in that report. And that is that many of the jobs that were displaced during the recession were paying $130,000 to $160,000 a year. The jobs that are backfilling that are at a much lower level, and some as low as $45,000 a year. So it's not just the numerical count of the jobs, it is actually the decrease in the velocity of money that is moving through Virginia's economy that we ought to be mindful of. Further, if you take a look at the revenues that are projected in the Senate budget, that might temper some of this exuberance a little bit more, particularly in light of those who would boast that this proposed executive budget is the largest in the history of the Commonwealth of Virginia, north of $100 billion. You have to wonder which audience was being spoken to when that proclamation was made, particularly when you look and see that approximately 7 out of the 9 major general fund revenue factors are either stagnant are either stagnant, below forecast, below reforecast, or below where the previous year's revenues were. And I think that perhaps from a fiscal standpoint, that we need to temper our exuberance and move forward with some deliberateness and be very mindful of our stewardship responsibility to the citizens of the Commonwealth of Virginia. And as we work on this budget, to keep those realities in mind as we look at a proposed budget spending north of $100 billion and talking about one of the largest capital proposals in the history of Virginia. And when I think about capital, I'm mindful of one of my daughters when she went off to college and got in the mail the credit card application. She got a credit card, and then she came and says, "Dad, do I have to pay for what I charged on this credit card?" We have to pay for what we spend in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and even on those capital issues, when you lock into a 30-year, basically a 30-year loan, you've got to have the sustainable resources to continue to pay the debt service on that loan. And if the revenues do not meet the expectations, then we are all confronted with the unpleasantries of having to go into other secretariats and reduce the spending on those budgets. So I compliment His Excellency on his salesmanship and his continued efforts to bring business and industry into the Commonwealth of Virginia, but let's not be hallucinogenic about where we are going on this and to keep our hands on the pace of revenues.
Thank you, Senator. The senior senator from Loudoun, Senator Black.
Point of personal privilege.
Senator has the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen, you know, over the last couple of years, we've heard over and over when we've had these tragic mass shooting incidents that the instructions given to the people were to run and hide in place. And it has not worked very well. And every once in a while, there's a glimmer of hope in our culture and the direction that we're taking. And this morning, there was a report that there is an active shooter, or there was at the time at San Diego military medical facility, which incidentally services Camp Pendleton and the Marines. And you know, I'm reminded in reading the report, there was a country song. It was called "The Coward of the County," and Kenny Rogers sang. It was a rather lovely song. And this fellow was his father said, "Don't fight, don't get yourself in trouble. You know, you gotta avoid trouble." And finally, this fellow followed his father's instructions until one day his wife was assaulted by a bunch of bullies. And upon that, he went into the room, he closed the door, and he cleaned house. And the final line of the song was, "Daddy," he says, "sometimes you got to fight when you're a man." And out at San Diego, when they gave instructions on how to deal with the active shooter, they said, "Run, hide, or fight." God bless them. My compliments to the United States Navy and to their cohorts, the U.S. Marines out in San Diego. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. The senator from Buckingham, Senator Garrett.
Thank you, Mr. President. Point of personal privilege.
Floor.
A wiser person than me once said, "In this world there are lies, damn lies, and statistics." And when I heard that you're 500 times more likely to be murdered by your domestic partner with a gun, I thought that was all three. I looked it up. I think it's funny that people actually believe that on its face. I looked up some FBI statistics. We know the FBI is probably biased, but essentially about half of domestic murders occur with instrumentalities other than firearms. In fact, you're more likely to be beaten to death with bare hands or feet than you are killed with a rifle or shotgun. You're about twice as likely to be stabbed to death than you are to be killed with a rifle or shotgun. But so that 500 times more likely number, if you believe that really and truly, you just think a little harder. I wanted to read something from a friend, Chris Cox, in light of the theory that the Lone Ranger is dead, that a good person with a gun can't help you when there's a bad person with a gun. Maybe you'll note a theme here. Far from rare, self-defensive gun uses occur each and every day in the United States, with armed citizens coming from every age group, race, religion, and ethnicity. Self-defense includes men, women, rich and poor. It takes place in every corner of our great nation. In short, armed citizens are as diverse as the country itself, but they all share a uniquely American right to defend themselves, regardless of background or circumstance. Here are a few stories from last summer. Perhaps the most high-profile recent instance of armed self-defense involves former CNN employees Lynn Russell and her husband Chuck DeCaro. They were staying in a motel in Albuquerque, New Mexico in June, and according to the Albuquerque Journal, I'm sure a pro-gun rights shill, according to the Albuquerque Journal, as Russell went to retrieve an item from the couple's vehicle, she was approached by an armed criminal who forced her into the motel room. The couple tried to reason with the man. While doing so, Russell was able to assist DeCaro in retrieving one of two pistols the couple, who have right to carry permits, were keeping in their room. Once armed, DeCaro fired at the attacker, fatally wounding the criminal. DeCaro was struck by the thieves' return fire but survived. After the ordeal, CNN reporter Lynn Russell made clear just how much she values the right to self-defense, telling a reporter, "The discussion of the debate to own a gun is just ridiculous. As Americans, we have the right to bear arms, and as humans, we have the right to protect ourselves." In April, according to a report in the pro-gun Chicago Tribune, that was editorializing on my part, a driver from the ride-sharing cell phone app Uber was traveling near Chicago's Logan Square when a man opened fire on a crowd. The driver, a right-to-carry permit holder who wisely took advantage of Illinois' new carry law, retrieved a firearm and shot the active gunman before he was able to shoot multiple people, halting the attack before anyone was killed. What? Despite the driver's heroic actions, Uber subsequently and inexplicably enacted a policy barring its drivers and passengers from carrying firearms. Go figure. In July, the owner of a clothing store in Milwaukee was forced to defend his shop when a group of 5 criminals attempted a daring robbery. The thieves got inside by using a van to smash through the store's security doors. While the criminals were attempting to get through the mangled doors, owner Rami Mara retrieved a semi-automatic rifle, which gun control advocates call an assault rifle, in an attempt to proceeded to defend himself with it. All 5 criminals fled empty-handed. That same month, a customer in Academy Sports in Topeka, Kansas, helped halt an armed robbery. Joey Tapley was at the store's gun counter buying ammunition when 3 armed robbers entered the store and attempted to steal more firearms. Tapley responded by drawing his gun and confronting the thieves. His actions forced the robbers to drop the guns they were carrying and flee from the store. Tapley later told Topeka, Kansas's WIBW that he was carrying his gun thanks to Kansas's recently enacted universal carry law. Excuse me, loving it. In August, 14-year-old Andrew Mason was at home in North Las Vegas when a pair of home invaders entered his house. Andrew took action, putting his younger siblings in an upstairs closet and retrieving a rifle and a cell phone. As Andrew explained it to the local media, one of the home offenders came upon him. "I had my gun loaded and was ready to shoot, but when he saw me, he ran away." Andrew's father, Kewan Mason, told reporters, "I believe in the right to bear arms. It's not like my son was foreign to it. We go to the shooting range quite often." Also in August, a frequent burglary victim took action to defend his home in Rockland, Maine. As reported by the pro-gun Portland Press Herald, 67-year-old Harvey Lembo, a retired lobsterman who uses a motorized wheelchair, purchased a revolver after being the victim of 5 robberies in 6 years. Later that night, Lembo awakened to find a home invader in his apartment looking for his prescription meds. Lembo retrieved his revolver, mounted his wheelchair, and confronted the criminal. At first, Lembo attempted to hold off the thief until police arrived, but ultimately was forced to act by shooting the thief in the shoulder when the thief came at him. These are just a few stories. I'm sure I can come up with more to prove that, yes, indeed, firearms are often and frequently used by innocent people to save the lives of others and themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. The senator from Rockingham, Senator Obenshain.
Mr. President, it's with trepidation that I rise for two purposes. First of all, for an announcement. Immediately following session, I would like the Senate Courts of Justice Committee to meet at my desk. Second, for a point of personal privilege, Mr. President, members of the Senate, yesterday made some comments about ethics and about football tickets and about the small story that was buried in the Blizzard news at the end of last week about a member of the governor's cabinet taking gifts in the form of free tickets to a luxury box for the Redskins' home playoff game during Wild Card weekend. Now, the governor's office responded and I guess put out a flurry of statements yesterday saying that, among other things, that the governor's office checked with the newly formed Ethics Council to make sure that the gift was legal. And in initial news reports, the administration didn't choose to quibble with the characterization of the tickets as a gift, but instead said that the gift was simply allowed under the newly elected ethics laws. Now, a couple of points. Number one, as I recall, at the end of session last year, after the ethics law was adopted, the governor sent down a number of amendments to reflect his view concerning what his standards are and what he thought that our standards should be. And one of those amendments to the ethics legislation was to remove from that the so-called widely attended events exception. He wanted to take that out so that things like tickets to football games wouldn't be allowed, and communicated that as one of his priorities. And I pointed out yesterday and have pointed out since that, we're not talking about the ethics law. So we'll set that aside for now, because nobody, not me, at least not me, I'm not contending that the acceptance of these wild card weekend luxury box tickets by a member of the governor's administration violates the ethics law. However, the governor established for himself and for his office on the day of his inauguration different standards when he signed Executive Order Number 2 that imposed an outright ban on gifts to him or members of his administration in excess of $100. Now, despite the denials issued by the administration yesterday, I want to point out a couple of things. First, news reports from the time of the signing of the executive order said that the order would appear to prohibit a wide or limit a wide range of gifts, including, get this, free Redskins tickets. The administration never sought to quibble with that characterization, and indeed in public statements has embraced that characterization. And that is, until this week, they have sought to embrace that. Now, what the governor's office wants to talk about is the ethics bill that was passed last year by the General Assembly, and to try and justify these gifts under that legislation, dismissing the terms of the executive order, which expressly states that it imposes an ethical standard for the executive branch, notwithstanding other provisions of state law. And his spokesman says that the ethics laws are so ambiguous that it's just proof that we over here in the General Assembly didn't do a good enough job last year with what was a bipartisan ethics reform bill. And now, I say this with all respect, but This explanation by the spokesman from the governor's office is nothing but an artful dodge. The governor signed Executive Order number 2 precisely because he said he wanted to hold his staff to a higher standard. Is he going to do it or not? It's beyond belief that the governor's spokesman is now suggesting that the acceptance of these tickets represented some kind of a trade mission to a luxury box at an NFL playoff game. Now, I'd like to get the Redskins to relocate to Virginia as much as anybody. I'm on board. Sign me up. But honestly, I don't think that many Virginians are going to fall for the suggestion that there was a whole lot of recruiting going on in that luxury box. And I'd like to know who was in that luxury box. I think the people of Virginia ought to know. I'm guessing it wasn't Daniel Snyder. I may be wrong. But I'll also bet that the administration official in question did not take along with him a VEDP representative. I'd like to know, and I hope somebody will ask, who was it who went along on that trade mission to the luxury box at Wild Card Weekend? We should know that. I wonder if pictures were taken. I wonder if emails were exchanged. I want to know what the request was to the Ethics Council. Now, I just have to say, I read carefully all of the articles about the governor's response to my inquiries yesterday. And I think he owes the people of Virginia, that his office owes the people of Virginia, more of a response. I mean, these are his standards, his ethical standards and responsibilities he established. And I think the people of Virginia ought to know whether he's going to hold people accountable to those standards or not. If he's not, just repeal it. Just repeal it. If you're not going to hold people accountable, forget about it. But until then, let's have some transparency.
Thank you, Senator. The senior senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw.
Just a point of personal privilege, just a couple of things here. First off, I'd be pretty disappointed if the governor spends more than 2 minutes on somebody sitting in a suite at a Redskin game. I mean, give me a break. That's hardly, stop the presses. We got a major, problem here in America. The other thing is, I was listening to the senator from Buckingham, and these are old statistics from American Bar Association, because I don't know how to use this machine. And just a couple of interesting points here. And these are old statistics, and I suspect it's a lot worse. It just says here that the death rate amongst U.S. children younger than 15 years of age is nearly 12 times higher than among children in the 25 other industrialized countries combined. We're doing just a great job here. We can't, the solution is just more guns. We had that group here the other day from all over the Citizens Defense League or whatever they call themselves. And I was talking to one of them on the third floor, or a group of them. And I'd asked him about a couple years ago in Hawaii, they either had 1 or 2 gun deaths for the whole state for the whole year. And you know what he said to me? I'm telling you, Senator Garrett, this is what he said to me. He said, well, that's because you can't bring guns into that state. And he says it's virtually impossible to buy a gun in that state or to get a concealed weapon permit. Well, bingo, okay? Man, you don't have to be Albert Einstein to figure that out. Finally, just briefly, I don't know, while I was over in Hawaii, there was a blip on there about this kid that asked his father, a young kid, what is a Canadian? And the father told the kid, it's an unarmed North American with health insurance, okay?
Thank you, Senator.
He was right.
The senior senator from Henrico, Senator McEachin.
Mr. President, I rise to a point of personal privilege.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, members of the Senate, I had hoped that we would not go down this path when I said yesterday that I was hopeful that money and ethics would not become a partisan issue. but the senator from Rockingham has continued down that path, and I'm forced to ask some questions. Because you see, it wasn't long ago that we had a governor who somehow thought that receiving a write-off for his daughter's wedding or wedding reception was not a gift. Where was the floor speech about that? And it seems that not long ago, Mr. President, we had a governor who had a $5,000 Rolex given to him somehow, some way. Where was the floor speech about that? And Mr. President, we had not long ago a governor who took loans on a handshake, not a documented loan, not the types of loans that you and I go and get from a bank. Where was the floor speech about that? Mr. President, we can take our time and have all sorts of points of personal privilege and throw mud at each other and at each other's political parties if we want to. I was a former member of the other chamber. I know how to do that, Mr. President. We ought not be taking the time to engage in that type of dialogue, but we will do it. And so I ask, Mr. President, where's the consistency? Where was the outrage when all those things were going on, and now we're worried about someone in a Redskin skybox? Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Any other business to come before the Senate? The clerk will please report any announcements on the desk.
Today, Tuesday, January 26th, the Committee for Courts of Justice will meet immediately upon adjournment at the chair's desk. The Committee on Local Government will meet 1/2 hour after adjournment in Senate Room B. The Finance Subcommittee on Education will meet at 3:30 p.m., 10th floor conference room. Senators Norman, Newman, Howell, Saslaw, Hanger, and Ruff. The Privileges and Elections Subcommittee on Certificate, Oath, and Confirmation Review will not meet. The Privileges and Elections Subcommittee on Certificate, Oath, and Confirmation Review will not meet. The Committee on Privileges and Elections will meet at 4 p.m. in Senate Room A. The Education and Health Subcommittee on Health will meet at 4 p.m. in 3rd floor East Conference Room. Senators Cosgrove, Black, Barker, Lewis, and Suderline. The Finance Subcommittee on Capital Outlay will meet at 5 p.m. 10th floor Conference Room. Senators Norman, Saslaw, Ruff, Wagner, McDougal, and Alexander. Tomorrow, Wednesday, January 27th, the Finance Subcommittee on Public Safety will meet at 7:30 a.m., 10th floor conference room. Senators McDougal, Howell, Norman, Lucas, Carrico, and Obenshain. The Women's Legislative Roundtable will meet at 8:30 a.m. in the 4th floor East conference room. The Committee on Finance will meet at 9 a.m. Senate Room B. The General Laws and Technology Subcommittee Number 1 will meet at 9 a.m. 4th floor East conference room. Senators Locke, Barker, Black, Garrett, DeSteff, Saravel, Pike, and Vogel. The Republican caucus will meet at 11:30 a.m. Senate Room 2. The Democratic caucus will meet at 11:30 a.m. in Senate Room 1.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The senator from Lynchburg, Senator Newman.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate do now adjourn until 12 noon tomorrow.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, should the Senate stand adjourned until 12 o'clock noon tomorrow? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The Senate stands adjourned until 12 o'clock noon tomorrow.